I think that you rightly point out that there are issues, or it is a global issue with violence against women, and I think that should be more of a reason, that should be more of a motivation for us to reclaim spares, public spares wherever they are, whether virtual or public, rather than leaving them. So it's fear should motivate you, or I mean, it's not really fear, but the realization that there's violence and you might be, as a woman, might be exposed to more violence or hate than a man would be, should motivate you to come on much more stronger. And I don't think that I've never feared, or I've never sort of taken, like, I've never sort of thought that, oh, I'm a woman, that's why I'm facing this. I don't think that I've ever had that thought.
I'll add to that. I think nobody's quite as brave as Sana is, but
yes,
she's very brave because
and she's an inspiration. I mean, all of you here are
a lot of us. But I think there comes a time when you have to say to yourself that is it worse to keep quiet and remain scared, or is it worse to speak out and face the risk? And I think I have come to a stage, perhaps in my life the last few years, where I've seen for myself that if I don't speak up, then I have the society that I deserve. So I need to speak up. Sometimes it is easier for us to speak in the social media than it is for us to speak in the open at activities that are, or protests. But more and more we are trying to speak in both spaces because it is important. It is important to be heard. And if we are not heard, if we do not say that we are against what is going on, if we don't say that this makes us sick to our stomach and that something should be done about it, then I think we will forever remain scared.
So basically the alternative is so much worse.
It is so much worse. And I think that is what gives us the strength to speak up, but still we don't have as much strength as she does.
Sabine, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, I just wanted to say that I think I'm a little naive about risk and fear.
Yeah.
I just don't think about it.
Yeah.
And I think this has a lot to do with your early years and how you're raised. And I think I've been very fortunate to have a mother who, when I was 6, I used to ride a bicycle up and down my street, and then I was like, I have to get out of this gully. And when I was 7, my mother let me go. With a lot of fear in her heart, but I was allowed to let go, whether it was crossing the street or going out of her sight. And so I think there are many things that influence you as you grow up. So whether it's starting a new business or whether it's going out on the streets. I mean, so people have this, governments exist or operate around the premise of creating fear in people, right? Otherwise, how will they control you? So, unka bahut ek sinister, there's a sinister role that they play in this regard. And then there's this perceived fear. So I went to 9/0 a few weeks ago, part of this collective called Citizens for Democracy. And I think it's really important for citizens to engage with political parties, however awful they may be. We need to know what they do, where they operate, where they sit, who the representatives are that we've elected into power. And if we don't know who they are, we cannot ever hold them accountable. So when I was going, there were all the usual jokes. Oh dear, will you come back alive? Oh dear, if you're not back in 2 hours, shall we send someone for you? I mean, 9/0 is the safest place in Karachi. The press club. It is. I mean, come on, think about it. What's going to happen at the PSQM headquarters outside? And it was a very exciting experience. Frankly, I loved doing that. I started going to their corner meetings. I want to attend corner meetings and for all the political parties to see how they operate. And Altaf Hussain addressed us for 1 hour. and they made a big point about saying, hey, look, we don't have fangs. They said this, we're normal people, the Rabta Committee, etc., which is the nerve center. So if you don't go out and you don't know what's happening, then this fear is largely, I mean, it's ridiculous. You need to tap into that. And the press club is, again, a very safe space. Now, are these protests productive? Do they achieve anything? I don't know. I mean, I question what protests should be like in the 21st century all the time. I don't have answers, but I do think about it all the time. But I think fear Really, if you feed it, it grows. And you just need to.
Sorry, was that the safe space in Karachi or all of Pakistan?
So now I'm looking at it. If you're going to quote me out of context, I know where you live.
That answer helps.
Watch out, I'm sending.
Karachi. I mean, and, you know, again, another thing that I don't believe in generalizing. I can't speak for, I don't know what every Pakistani is thinking, or, you know, what people outside the circle that I interact with are thinking. I mean, how can you? So I don't know about
He's made. So I think the space has opened up where they also feel that they need to be out there, and it's not just the US or the Western world or even Egypt where technology is being used. I think more and more people are seeing the advantages of having this discourse. Even the parliamentarians who know that there will come a time when perhaps the educated in this country, their vote will count. Right?
Or they'll get up and vote.
Yes, that's what I meant, that they eventually get up and vote.
Why don't you go ahead first?
It was more like a comment than a question, referring to the idea of fear and whatnot. I actually had the opportunity to play a role in Vagina Monologues last spring.
I'm sorry, could you give us your name, please?
My name is Alishba, and it was a very liberating experience to actually go on stage and do it. But it was not in Pakistan. It was in the States. So I was talking to one of my majors is also theater, and I talked to my professors, and I was like, I would really like to have this play done in Pakistan.
It has
been in 2003. Yes, our research. Yeah, but it was, you know, I'll tell you what actually happened when I talked to a couple of people from the so-called liberal theater, leaders of Pakistan. Their response was horrible. I talked to my professor, and I was like, I would like to go and do it. And then she gave me ideas how to incorporate it in this culture and how to actually make it kind of crafty and to actually bring in people and whatnot. Not to, the whole point of Vagina Monologues is to be explicit and be like, okay, this is it, and it's in your face, and you have to deal with it, right? I came over here and I landed in Lahore, and I talked to I went to Piro's Cafe, and I talked to these Piro's brothers. Oh my God, I was actually stunned by the way they were discouraging me. They're like, there's a lot of stuff in our literature that's crafty, and that's this, that talks about this. You don't necessarily have to do it this way. And the woman's response was actually not that great when it happened here the last time. I am not too sure how, what's the truth value of that comment is, but to actually come, being 21, coming into Pakistan and actually wanting to do something like this, yes, I do have a little bit of fear, but I am actually determined. And I'm like, before I leave to go back to my studies, and all of that stuff, I'm here for a couple more months, I want to have it done. So from Facebook and Twitter activism to bring it out in the public, to bring it out to the real world, and then have people talk about it, I think that gap needs to be covered by people like us, because I talk a lot, I blog a lot. I just had a ridiculous debate with a very dear friend of mine who I thought was liberal, but thinks that sometimes women are to be blamed for when they are raped, So when things like that happen, it actually motivates you that, what, it doesn't matter if you're going to arrest me, or it doesn't matter if you're going to talk bad about me, going to kind of, go all over me, put tabs on me. I am going to have to do it.
So you feel that you are determined.
You have to
had
do
a question, is that right?
It's not a question actually. I want to share something. I may be the youngest in this group. I'm only 19, and I came from the Philippines a year back. So I've been here for a year and a half now, and I've been in Twitter for a year. I've seen these people and I got inspired. So what I want to bring up to this podium, the people who have actually the influence, is that in Philippines, I used to come from a convent school. And our school used to sponsor a NGO for women activism, women rights, abused women, abused children. It's called Gabriela. Jehan has been in Philippines. You must have probably heard about Gabriela. So our school brings us to those NGO centers to see the women, talk to the women. I mean, I don't have first-hand experience of abuse. And
any of my family members. But I've seen the women, especially the poor ones, they don't have anyone to back them up. So I want that in Pakistan as well, because I've been studying here, I'm in pre-medical, I've seen the children, they don't really care about this matter. I mean, I'm here sitting with you while my friends are partying right now because the exams were just done. So I want, I want you people who have the influence actually to go to the schools and influence these children who've got monies to even buy DSLRs and Blackberries to actually come and sit with the NGOs and see these children, especially the women who are abused. And in this way they would learn a lot, and they are like the mass population of Pakistan is the youth below 20. So they would really do a lot of influence.
But, yeah, there is something to be said about, yes, go ahead, Sabine.
So here's where I think brand building is really important. So activism in Pakistan is really, it's a pejorative word. People look down on, so there'll be stereotyping, or there'll be the NGO auntie, the NGO type, there'll be the,
right here.
You know,
new on the scene.
New on the scene, you know, you've given up corporate media to become an NGO auntie, you talked about the hysterical woman. So there's all of this, and a lot of people will obviously prefer to join a corporation.
A group. Which is established.
Yeah, that's right. So there's no risk involved, there's no, you know, so then people are apathetic, they'd rather not bother, it's so much easier to just get on with your life. So there are all these issues around activism, and I think there we need brand building, we need to make this sexy, and get people inspired to, you know, and you can volunteer, you don't have to give up everything that you're doing to you know.
Okay, so I want to add to that. So we started to do this with the Take Back the Tech campaign. We've gone to universities, and Faria went with Nigat and Shahzad to Gilgit. Nigat and Shahzad also went to Quetta. We have spoken at universities across the country. We're trying, I mean not in every city yet, to talk about the issues and to tell them how they can join hands with us to try not only to spread the word that this is a problem in this country, that violence is being perpetrated, also to tell them how to keep themselves safe online, how to work with security settings on Facebook and Twitter, and how to keep whatever content they are creating on mobiles, how dangerous that is, you know, how they should keep their privacy in mind when they're doing things like that, the kind of things that are happening that they should be aware of. So lots of us are doing that now. Instead of taking them to NGOs in particular, as Naveen was saying, that's probably not the way. Let's take them out into the real world. Let's go out to them.
Just starting it.
Yeah. So let's go out to them, and in universities you can talk to 200, 300 kids at a time, and many of them do want to get involved. And I think at this stage, if Sana can talk about the floods and how they got involved and worked with women and children, I think that's something that...
Before that, I want to talk to Rebecca, and yeah, blogging in Egypt is huge, right? And very influential, yeah? So how is it, go ahead, what did you want to say? And my question is, how is it that people are blogging in Egypt, they're being taken seriously, and it is in fact something that is hip or sexy, as Sabine put it?
Yeah, I guess before I forget, I just wanted to suggest that maybe in your school, try to create like a group and invite people to come and talk, maybe on different social topics.
With that, I would want to add what Sabine just said, that without a strong backup organization, they wouldn't really come with me. And we need someone to influence them. It's really easy to encourage the youth. It's easy to take them out of their classrooms, and you know, it's easy to mold their minds. So I think that more than the elder ones in our country, it's the youth who can actually make a change, and they should be aware of these things.
Yeah, we've been asked to make partnerships with a lot of youth organizations, and it's great, and we're trying to do it. But it's also important for you to reach out to the people that you want to come and engage with you, so that they know, and so that you guys have a support network in your school existing, ready to act, and you don't, so you don't have to wait after they come and talk to you. Then you can join right away.
Write a letter to the Express Tribune.
I think that's where organizations like Gawahi and Take Back the Tech comes in, because they're going to the ground level and to the schools and colleges.
And the writers are basically the youth, right?
Yeah.
And Kawaii,
Contributors,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
I'm not like a blogger per se. I'm not like in that community so much. We intersect, and some of my partners in Harassment are more active with their blogs. But it did become very popular a couple of years ago because it was a new voice. Our media was very controlled. I hear your media is really open, or relatively open. No? Okay. 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 Most of our media was state controlled. We didn't have any independent voice. So when the bloggers started, taking videos of police brutality, or very soon after I started working with harassment in 2005, I think in 2006, one of the bloggers posted video footage of mass harassments downtown in Cairo, where women in abayas were chased and their clothes ripped off. This is very powerful, and it's shocking, and it wasn't seen before. So I think that started it, and then it grew, because then the media, the other media, the mainstream media, maybe first in the West, like international press. I'm not really 100% sure of that, but I think the international press took notice first and started, getting their news from the blogs, and then our media kind of opened up a little bit. Now we have a strong independent paper. There's more TV news that's independent and international now. So they kind of opened the door.
I think you can't underestimate, especially in countries like Pakistan, where literacy is a problem. The things like YouTube, where a lot of digital stories like on Gawahi.com, or even stories. There's an organization in Lahore, UET, which got together with Apwa, and illiterate women actually created digital stories about harassment that they had faced and put them up. They were taught how to put them up on YouTube. So I think the fact that you can now put up video and audio content and share your viewpoint is very strong. And visuals, of course. Photographs speak 1,000 words. So blogging is not restricted to now text anymore.
No, not at all. And video blogging.
And local language. So I think that there's so much power out there that can be harnessed. Right. There's so much that we can do. And people are doing it. People are using it.
I was just going to say it's really hard, Nabiha. Yeah. Because I've been a teacher for a very long time, and so there's wonderful optimism that we can go into schools and make a difference. The schools won't let you come in. Okay, first of all,
especially for
if they let you come in, if
Yeah.
you're the student who's brought that person in, good luck. Okay, I'm sorry I'm being really pessimistic, but I'm trying to give you a bit of a realistic voice because I feel like we've all moved on to the clouds at the moment. And with branding, it will help. But the brand will then get the CIA upon. So what do you do with that?
Actually, I've been working with the universities, and universities are actually encouraging it because they're seeing more and more instances of online harassment.
Maybe it's just Lahore.
No, I
I'm talking about Islamabad, Lahore, Karachi, Quetta, Peshawar.
But these are public or private?
Both.
Amazing. Okay.
Both.
I think
So,
it's
because where I work, I can guarantee they will.
Things are changing because when heads of universities see that this is becoming a problem, they actually invite, they ask us to send Faria to speak to kids, and they said because many of these kids come from either boys' schools or girls' schools, and they're suddenly thrown together in a co-ed environment, and so they don't know how to behave, they don't even know what constitutes harassment, and they're using technology to harass the girls, or sometimes even the girls are harassing the boys. that must be happening too. So they said we want some sort of orientation, we want you to talk about things like this, because they need to know. And soon they'll be going out in the real world and suddenly they'll feel like aliens. So.
Because a lot of universities, unfortunately, also setting up a bit of a Saudi police thing over the summer. As I found out, like a lot of some of your top universities where we want to talk about secularism and harassment, I'm not going to name the university, but it's one of the best ones. Setting up a committee for Mumbai vice, virtue, morals, this, that. And for those of us who try to on the opposite, they'll be more obsessed about PDA than what's happening with the kids.
That's
So,
Is it Ekla University?
I'm not enough. I can't name. I can tell you in August.
Yeah, that's when she quit his place.
So I'm really happy to hear that, but I guess I've just had a bad experience.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's true what you're
Well,
saying.
it doesn't eliminate the
Yeah.
fact that there is a problem, right? I mean, some good examples will, you
I
can
hope
always
it
find examples.
turns into a waterfall effect, actually.
I think in some cases you need to sidestep the issue. So I run a public space in Karachi, and often people will say, oh, why don't you go to schools, why don't you go to universities? And I think sometimes it's important to bring people out of those cloistered environments and expose them to a different world. And we work with a few schools, but we never go there. We always ask them to come out. And so one of my agendas is rational thinking, for example.
Extremely important.
So so kids from the school come in to watch films and have discussions. So we've screened stuff on evolution, and these kids transform when they're outside. And so I'm a bit of an anti-school activist. I'm not saying that people shouldn't go to school. I'm all for lifelong learning, but I think we need alternative spaces for learning to take place. And so these kids come out of that environment and they're different.
Yeah.
And then the teacher is just this one person in a corner who's kind of marginalized in that space. And then you have a great opportunity to get them thinking. And that's all you can do. You can just plant a little seed.
Well, I hope it's a waterfall effect because it's...
No, and now A-level students there are groups that are encouraging this. There are A-level students
There are some students
who held an activity at T2F where they were talking to other A-level students, and this was a whole room full of A-level students, about harassment and about women's issues and stuff like that. And they said it's part of what our school insists should be part of our curriculum, that we should be learning about these things and becoming aware. So,
Yeah.
and women in rural areas were creating radio programs. So, what is the name of that outfit in Pakistan that does all this training? Us is training women, and so things are happening.
It's starting.
It's starting,
I
and
think
if
we
we
just
just catch on.
more aggressively go with it,
Yeah.
because I think it's still very slow. And
But as Naveen said, one person or in groups of individuals can't do it. Everybody needs to get involved
without
and
the
do what they
And
can.
patience. I mean,
And
one of the
patience,
first
yeah.
rules of activism is, you've got to be resilient and patient, and it's like learning classical music.
And also with respect to your question about activism, I think if a group of students within their school, within your class, like you, could start talking about it, you could possibly there are a lot of people doing that. So, but you can initiate it. So then, of course, that's how you can get people the heads or whatever to sort of welcome such initiatives, because if they see that students are interested, maybe they would arrange for these things, maybe they would be more welcoming.
actually works more.
Yeah, because otherwise if we approach them, they're like, our students are not interested, they won't be interested, not many will come, are you sure you want to do this? But it can work the other way around, if you start it and then they invite us.
I think you were talking about branding and how groups are going to be labeled CIA organizations and stuff. I just want to say I kind of go back to some of those things for Express, and I think that it's kind of up to organizations as well, besides individuals, to take a stand and say
look at
believe in
WAF.
something. Sorry?
They have WAF. They have the Women's Action Forum. They have no sort of agendas. They've been trying to work for 30 years. But they're constantly being accused of being agents and all of that.
Well, you have to.
I think we shouldn't worry about that.
I think we should worry about
Tune
that.
out the noise. Just
Yeah, I think it needs to be
ignore it.
given
It doesn't matter.
There's a point where you just take a stand and say this is what we're going to do.
You're talking about organizations. This is like I have a personal story. Like my family doesn't seem to agree with my liberal ideals, and you're talking about organizations being called that. I've been called that by my dad. He's like, you are an imperialist. They have brainwashed you. They want people like you in CIA who are people from here but have their mentality. And I'm like, Dad, what are you talking about? So it's like a thing that needs to change.
But
from
if the
grassroots
students started, it
and
worked so well. If you look at the lawyers' movement, when the students started movements within universities, and then the faculty got involved, and then the outsiders got involved, and it became massive. But it started with the students.
Yeah.
But then if you're also like starting with like students and going into schools and whatnot, my concern with social activism is that a lot of the things and a lot of liberal ideas and whatever that I've been coming across and the people that I'm meeting this summer that I actually never knew existed in Pakistan, like the liberal ideas and whatnot, they belong to a certain social niche. Yeah, they do. And that is one thing that I want to, like, I want to know how we can we can spread this out into the middle class and then go towards, especially I think is the middle Pakistan
I
middle class is
actually
actually
think
creating
I'm
a
going
lot of
to
chaos.
differ with you there because I think that the privileged classes of Pakistan have the opportunity and the resource to do so much,
But
and yet they don't do
Yeah,
anything,
exactly. So I'm just
especially
saying
the
how do
young
we
people.
penetrate that?
But I want
Can I just say
to
something? Just
Yes.
real quick. I have a real problem with this label of liberal and conservative and this and that. And I think if we change the language a little bit and start talking more about progressives and sort of just being, as a progressive society, we don't want to swing to liberal or whatever. There's political freedom. Anybody can be what they want. But if the idea across the board, across all social classes, is for forward movement, evolution, progressivism, I think language has a big role to play.
Humanistic.
Yeah, as opposed to secular, because when you say
Holistic
secular, everyone
approach.
starts freaking
Yeah.
out. Oh, you're an atheist. Definitely,
So,
we need to think about the language that we use
But
as another tool to further our aims.
I do want Sana to say something.
I do believe that language and labels should be systematically used to polarize public discourse, which is what's happening. We don't have that much public discourse. But I would agree with Naveen as well on this. It's not as polarized as it seems. The public discourse is polarized, but the ground reality is completely different. The middle class has the opportunity to do it. They can do it. We can't force people who are hard at earning, they have limited resources to make a difference. So if they can't do it, we'll have to do it for them, right? So there's a middle class, an urban elite, or whatever you want to call that. That shouldn't be an excuse for not doing it. I think we're just.
I think that was not my question. My question was like, how do we actually go and talk about changing mindsets to people who are not even open to any sort of
it's
sports
when
like
you know
that.
Sabine was right, interacting with political parties because
They have
you know,
the mass
Actually,
Yeah.
interacting in general.
especially with the political parties with the grace, and that's how you channelize.
Listen, I don't know, what is your name?
Alishba.
Alishba, you see what happens is don't let that distract you or stop you. Because there will always be people who will disagree or violently disagree with what you say. Concentrate on those whose mindsets you can change. And once that momentum is created, those people will also come on.
And
I've seen that
everyone
happen.
wants to say something.
Sorry.
And
And this is very much a local thing as well. Like, it's different in all of our societies, I think. But I just wanted to share with you our experience that with women's issues and violence and harassment and all of this, there is a label that's very strong as well, that feminism and violence and these topics are all like from the West and are trying to change culture, right?
Yeah.
But what we find is, like, if we leave all of that, if we leave like we don't label ourselves, we don't call ourselves a feminist movement, we don't call ourselves, we just ignore it, whatever. We're doing this work, and we find that if we just talk to people like without vocabulary, then every woman of every social class disagrees with violence, and it's easier to just kind of make a personal connection, and we find that it stops being an issue. Like, changing the mindset of like, maybe women who are illiterate or women from the poorer classes or something. We don't have to change anything. We just find that if we talk differently and make a more human connection, there's a lot of traditional, religious, like historical commonalities that work in our favor. We're not doing anything outside of our culture and traditions with harassment, with violence and everything. So we just have to we have to be creative ourselves and find these ways to talk about it.
I want to ask something. In one of your interviews, I saw that you're also sending across a manual to the United States. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So, like, we're talking about repressive societies like ours. But then how does that make sense? Can you explain?
We're trying to put together a best practices, lessons learned kind of guide, because a lot of countries have requested to adopt harassment in their countries, and the first one was the States. Yeah, South Africa, Lebanon. There's a lot of countries that have.
And now Pakistan.
Now Pakistan.
Yeah,
We're really
already.
happy. You're going to be the first.
Yeah,
actually.
excellent.
Yeah, there's been a lot of requests, so we're super excited.
Yes,
I think, and I'd like to follow on that, and that's what I've been thinking the whole time. Is it's not about society, the difference in societies, because speaking as an American, there are so many issues that are similar to this right now. For example, you brought up you had a discussion with someone you thought was very liberal, but who said, well, sometimes if someone's raped, it was really there. That's the latest movement in the United States, the feminist movement. It's slut walks. Exactly.
Yeah.
And to say, it doesn't matter what kind of makeup they were wearing, it doesn't matter what clothes they were wearing, it doesn't matter if she looked a certain age, that no means no. And even in the most respected media outlets in the United States, the first thing, whether it's a high-profile celebrity rape case or whatever, the first thing they do is probe the woman's sexual history and what they were wearing and what is their, and that's irrelevant. And so it's not about that this, one society is more repressed than the other, or more liberal or more advanced. These are issues that are global, and I think that that's something that's really important to remember.
Absolutely. I think some of the language needs to change, as Rebecca was saying, because what's happened is that some of the people who started some of these movements in Pakistan, or elsewhere perhaps, have started adopting, I have noticed, and it irritates me, because they've started adopting the language that has been used by human rights organizations and people. And you see the same words being used and they begin to bug me. Because everybody expresses themselves in different ways, but when you hear the same thing over and over again, you think it is propaganda. And it is. Because that language is brought in by somebody else from something that has happened somewhere else. And that's when people who are not so well educated, or people from different class structures, will feel alienated because you are using vocabulary that doesn't relate to them. Whereas there was there was a rape incident and it was being reported on one of the TV channels. My housekeeper was listening in and she said, she said to me, how can this be allowed to happen, and how can anyone justify this? Any of these politicians or people who are saying that she was dressed this way or that way. So she has the common sense. Don't think she doesn't have common sense just because she doesn't have a formal education. She's aware and she's fearful for her daughters. She's fearful for her sons. So I think it's the language that tends to alienate sometimes.
Okay, in conclusion, because I'm hearing that the other panels are also coming to a close, I'd like all of you to make some remarks, starting with you, Sabine. We're kind of out of time here. I think we took all the questions really that we had in the audience, right? So Sabine, you want to start?
Well, I mean, just in closing, I want to address your thing about the vagina monologues and doing it here, and just use that as, we talked about fear, and I said I was naive about it and I don't really care, but that doesn't mean that one shouldn't be prudent. And you have to, as an activist, one book that I would recommend is Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. It's an old book. And one important thing that he says is to be familiar with the territory in which you operate. So whenever I go to a protest, I make sure that I wear smart footwear. I mean, I never wear heels anyway.
I was just going to say.
But so wear shoes in which you can run if you need to. Know your area. Know how you can escape. I mean, I had an awful incident at the press club, which I did say was safe, but other than when you're talking about the blasphemy law, where I nearly got attacked and potentially killed. And so we did need to escape from the back, thanks to a journalist who tipped us off that the Jamatis were waiting for us outside. And we did escape from a back route, so at least, so you've got to be prudent. And you have to analyze your environment. There was an incident at the Shanacht Festival a few years ago where a painting ended up destroying the entire festival. Now, an artist always has the right to create art a curator has a responsibility to analyze the environment in which he or she is operating, and that affected the work of a lot of us. That 5-day festival came to a grinding halt on the first day. So it's important to think about where you will stage this, who will come. You don't want to get killed for your causes. You have to live for your causes. And I can't reiterate this enough. You're no use to anyone dead. So you have to think smartly about things, and this doesn't mean you don't take up hard issues, but think about the problems you're solving and whether the solution that you've come up with is really going to address that issue or not. And as far as reaching out and building momentum, I think it's important to develop a personal philosophy about the kind of change that you're going to affect in the world. We're on Earth for a short time. You've got to pick and choose. There are many battles to fight. Pick a few. One even, maybe, which will be more than what a lot of people do in their lives. And if you begin to change even a few people, you know, that's a lot. And real meaningful change needs a lot of time and investment. So, you know, if you turn around and say, oh, I spoke to 5,000 students and now, you know, about activism or about women's rights or whatever, you really haven't gotten through to them, right? What can you do in one session? So I'm not a huge proponent of scale. I think that, and I don't know what the solutions are. Small companies function really well. They're nimble. They can do great things, innovative things. Small communities manage to do great work. So I think it's important to do small things effectively, really well, and then team up and learn to cooperate instead of compete with people and build momentum in that way. So
a lot of what I gathered from the comments and a lot of what I gathered from the audience and what we were talking about is there are a lot of buts in it. There are a lot of reluctance. We know exactly what our problems are. We know exactly what might be the solutions, but we tend to sort of lean back and think that it's not going to work out. I think from my own experiences, which aren't much like huge, like other people on the panel, this much I can say that once you just start off, you will have people to support you. Like I'm here sitting with these people who've practically given their life to the causes that they want to, have done a lot more than I have. But I'm sitting right here because part of the reason why, because maybe because they're too kind, and also because I wasn't reluctant in doing what I was doing. I thought that I'd put it on there, what's the worst that can happen? People won't like me, that's it. So whatever ideas you have, do the little that you can. You'll fail, I'm still trying, we're all still trying. But just go ahead and do that. And one more thing about the idea of mindset, I'll just take a minute to address that because we keep hearing that a lot, changing mindsets. I think we approach that thing, that whatever norm, in a very, very select perspective. Because for us, changing mindsets is more like implementing what we think is right. And it doesn't work like that. And with my own experiences, I would just share that I worked with flood survivors for 5 months last year. And I saw and I worked with a lot of women and interacted with them. So when I interacted with them, my first feeling was to just, sort of train them and tell them that, you shouldn't be treated like you are, and more of like, this is not what you should be doing. But I can't, because they're going to go back to their life and I'm going to go back to mine. And there's a certain culture that they follow. So we did just simple exercises. The first time we met them, I just would say salam and ask them how they are. And they would start talking about their, their kids and their husband and everything. So the second time I went to them, I asked them the same question. And they said the same thing. And so I said, when I ask you that question, I want you to tell me how you feel, how you are doing, what problems you are facing. And because we were already doing sanitary napkins and everything and doing maternal health as well. The third time I went there, these women were not only talking about themselves, they were also asking me for iron supplements, calcium supplements, and you name it, everything. So it's really not about changing mindset. It's not really, they're not going to open up or not talk to you. You'll be amazed. Just go out there and do it, and it'll just work out.
I think the branding, whereas it's important, like I'll just focus on the Take Back the Tech campaign. We started off with a very small group. I got together some young men and women and told them that, look, I'm really excited about this. This is a global campaign. It's not a local Pakistani campaign. But I think this is really exciting, and it's something that is very important to our society. And they just came on board. Jamal here took pictures, we made videos to explain why we thought it was important. We put them up on YouTube. Dina wrote a song for us. which we got a couple of other girls, Maria and Lisa, to sing for us. They, you know, there was so much content that we developed in order to spread the word. We had t-shirts, we had, you know, so not a lot of money was spent on it, but a lot of effort was spent on it. Naveen wrote a blog, Sana wrote a blog post, and Sabine provided us with the space, so we held interactive sessions. There were people who were already doing things in the space. We just brought them along and said, okay, so-and-so, you've been working in this space for 30 years, tell us, we are new to this, but we want to help you. And we want to spread the message of what you're doing and connect you with people who do think this is important. And now violence has taken on a totally different direction. And we think that it has become real for us now. Up until now, we thought it could only happen to somebody else. But now we know it can happen to anyone. So, you know, those are things. As soon as you start getting involved, you find people join the cause. There were young people who contacted us from across the country who said, how can we join? And this was young men and young women. Somebody said, oh, a cousin of mine, this happened and I don't want that to happen to someone else. So I think it's just a question of taking that first step, and then you'll find that a lot of people will come and support you.
I don't have anything to add. That's exactly what I would say.
Words.
Don't wait
That's
for you shouldn't wait for people to like come to you. Just do it. You'll find people who support you. You'll find your resources.
I would like to say in conclusion that, as I said before as well during the discussion, that the privileged classes of Pakistan have so much at their disposal, and frequently it happens that I don't know, people become complacent, they become, bored or whatever, I don't know. But they don't feel motivated to go out in the street and do something. So where others can't, you should. I saw in Brazil that people from the upper middle class and middle class are doing that. I don't see why we can't in Pakistan. Acha, Naragya Garib has asked me to say that workshop registration desk is open by 1:45 p.m. downstairs. So if you haven't registered for a workshop, please do. And also the lucky draw is at the end of the day, holding you hostage. There's an iPad 2 and a netbook, and that's going to be announced during the closing session. Lunch is upstairs where tea was. Thank you so much for joining us. And